Hi there, and welcome back to another video in the Engaging with Art series. Today we are looking at craftsmanship, and craftsmanship is an interesting quality of artwork that typically is handled in the production stage. It's maybe a little bit different than the previous topics we've discussed, but I thought that it was something important to address as viewers because it might be something we don't often consider. So just as a bit of a loose definition to get started, I sort of look at craftsmanship as a measure or evaluation of an artwork's physical nature. So it's sort of the nuts and bolts of the production process, often related to the raw materials used in the production of an art object. An important distinction I want to draw right away with craftsmanship is it's sort of the unintentional aspects of a work related to its presentation rather than the work itself. Think about it as like how work is fashioned into being and how that leads into its overall presentation when you're actually beholding it in its finished form. It's the aspects of a work that come down to the very fundamental levels of it. I want to draw the distinction right away because in contemporary art, there will be times when an artist will deliberately employ poor craftsmanship or divergent craftsmanship in an effort to say something or actually do so intentionally. And when that is done, it becomes a tool used by the artist rather than the craftsmanship itself, so to speak. To try to give a better understanding of what I mean by all of this, I want to give some examples. So a few simple things to think about are how a stretched canvas is wrapped, right? So when you see a painting that's done on canvas, the way the edges are smoothly wrapped around and then stapled securely and fastened on the back, that's an aspect of craftsmanship. Another good example is works on paper would be the quality of the paper of the finished piece. So do we have any creases, indentations? Is there any warping in the paper? The quality and standard of that paper's physical nature at the completion of the piece is basically measured by what we would say craftsmanship, is the quality of those materials in their finished state. Another example that I thought was helpful was just consider like handmade consumer goods. So the reason that some higher end brands are held in higher esteem is often because there is a finish to their products that is unmistakable. Think to yourself about, say, a handmade Italian leather bag. The stitching is going to be all very even. There won't be any runs in the leather. And the company that produces that bag is going to have a pedigree for that type of quality. That is considered good craftsmanship. That is considered craftsmanship that has been developed and built over time. I think Apple is pretty good when it comes to craftsmanship. Typically speaking, their presentation is always very streamlined. It's always very consistent. That's something, again, with craftsmanship you will notice. And this is, again, something that is very important to art, but also translates to just general consumer goods as a whole, too. That's a good entry point if you're trying to better understand, like, what do I mean by craftsmanship in general? So now that we've got that established, I kind of want to start discussing, like, how do we gauge craftsmanship? Like, what says good craftsmanship? What says less than good? And I think a good way to look at that is something I've often heard, which is that good craftsmanship often goes unnoticed. If an artist does the production phase of their work well, it won't be noticed by the viewer. It will essentially blend in with the finished piece to a degree that it doesn't detract or take away in any capacity. When an artist has a strong command over their process, you will often find that they utilize the raw materials, they utilize the actual physical forms that they need in order to produce the work in such a way that you don't even notice some of those characteristics, like I mentioned, like a very well-wrapped canvas or a paper that is just smooth and almost immaculate in its presentation. Poor craftsmanship, on the other hand, is fairly easily identifiable. The problem is that it stands out and it detracts from the artwork itself. It's something that you would notice. A few examples that I wrote down was like, say you see a framed artwork that is just actually crooked, or the mat is crooked in the frame, you would probably notice that immediately. We're going back to like the painting on a wrapped canvas. If the paint doesn't go to the edges of the canvas and there's the white that you notice coming from underneath on the edges and the sides. I think that would be very noticeable as well. A wooden sculpture that you see before you, and on the seams, maybe you notice there's beads of wood glue that were dripping and have now hardened. That another aspect of poor craftsmanship where it's very noticeable and it takes you out. As I mentioned earlier, we need to make a distinction because some artists will deliberately employ poor craftsmanship in an effort to subvert expectations. Now, that is a situation where I think it would be clear on the surface. You could probably find with the work's title or overall the work would carry that sort of mystique, or there would be an artist statement. There would be other indicators to help you know whether or not that was actually happening. In an instance where you're noticing a poor handling of the presentation of an artwork, it would stick out in a very negative way and it would be very disparate from the work itself. It would take you out of it. This is just how we as viewers can soak in the craftsmanship right on the surface, essentially. These are the things we want to consider or look at right away to help us determine what level of craftsmanship we're beholding here. I want to take time too as well to sort of discuss examples within my own practice. I've been using resin a lot, and the resin pours for me are a major part of my craftsmanship. I do 2 layers on all of my works with paper because the first layer typically has a lot of bubbles with the fibers of the paper reaching up to the surface. And so I sand that first layer down and do a second pour in order to have as much clarity as possible. Trying to have as much clarity as possible and a smoothness in that surface, to me, is a mark of my own craftsmanship. So it's something that I am constantly trying to improve upon. Likewise, the wood panels that I mount the drawings onto, I cut those myself. And so one aspect of that is trying really hard to get those panels as precise and square as possible, which is easier said than done. And so it means trying to cut the wood with precision and accuracy and continuing to grow at that as well. Shaving is as little as an eighth or even just a 16th of an inch off, to me, isn't great. And I don't like when that happens. Sometimes you have to live with it, but it's a mark against my craftsmanship, I feel. When doing works on paper, I always try to handle everything as gently as possible, making sure I'm only touching the margins, making sure that my clips, when I'm putting it on my board to work, are only touching the margins in order to, again, avoid any indentations, creases in the paper, and storage when it comes to these works. I'm constantly trying to make sure things lay flat, things lay smooth, and there's no warping taking place, because these, again, are all marks of craftsmanship. It's about trying to maintain the quality of the materials that I'm using. Now, just like any process, I believe craftsmanship for any artist is an ongoing process. I really do, and it's something that develops over time. I think as an artist gets more comfortable with the work they make, they start to streamline the production phases. They start to streamline every aspect. It's important, I think, as viewers to remember that producing artwork isn't just about the pencils or the paints coming down on the paper, or it's not about the words being typed onto the page. It's about the paper getting cut itself. You know, it's about acquiring the paints, making those choices, whether you're going to build and wrap your own canvases or whether you're going to purchase pre-made canvases. All of these things, all of these aspects of artwork are just as much a part of the production process, but typically we don't consider them because they seem so simple maybe, or just given. We take it for granted, but these are aspects of craftsmanship that are important. And so as an artist gets more and more comfortable with their craft, they make these parts of the process not easier, but more streamlined. Like I said, I think that's the best way to put it, just because it becomes more natural and it becomes a natural to sort of work at a higher degree. And going back to my own example, I am constantly trying to cut my wood panels better. I am constantly trying to cut my paper better. I am constantly trying to do better resin pours. Every time I do a resin pour, I am constantly evaluating, what did I do differently here? What was the effect of that? I try if there are any outliers or other things, just to continue to like observe the process and see how I can improve. Because to me, trying to produce work that is of the highest standard means highest standards across the whole spectrum of the process. And I think that's true for other artists as well. So as viewers, what is our takeaway here? What is the engagement part of the engaging with craftsmanship? And what does this have to do with any of us as viewers of artwork? As I say at the beginning of this video, craftsmanship is a little bit different than the other topics I've discussed because it's a bit more objective. There's a bit more of a concrete way we can evaluate this. To reiterate, excellent craftsmanship often goes unnoticed. And so if done well, you're not going to notice it. It's not going to distract you. It's not going to take you out of the work. And when you can recognize this now, having knowledge of what it is and what to look for a little bit more, hopefully that will allow you to recognize good craftsmanship and recognize it as a positive quality of that artist and of that artwork. Having a knowledge of craftsmanship can also inform us with regards to the skill and mastery of the artist, because if you are beholding artwork or an art object that has a high production value and high craftsmanship, it is a mark of high esteem for that artist. Just as I mentioned with the example of the handmade bag, if you see a bag that is very well produced and the craftsmanship is very strong, it's a strong quality of that company that produced it. I think just in general too, that craftsmanship and good craftsmanship is a quality of a very seasoned artist. It's a quality of an artist that really has honed their skills and works well with their medium. Not to reiterate or repeat myself too much, but I think again, we need to make these connections because it gives us an entry point into the caliber of work we're dealing with. If you see high mastery of skills, it is not only a testament to the artist, it's not only a testament to the process, it's a testament to the quality, the caliber, that this is highbrow professional artwork we're beholding. And again, that's an important aspect to consider as the viewer because it helps us take the work more seriously. At the end of the day, I think good artwork is striking in person, and that is always the case, and craftsmanship is just one element that heightens that overall. I think I'll stop there for now, but thank you so much for joining me, and I hope this has been a worthwhile little experience. I hope it just gives you more to think about with regards to artwork and how you engage with it, and please share this with anybody else who might find it helpful or useful. So until the next one, thank you everybody. Take care.